Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. This is going to be a video that I've already sort of made, but quite some time ago. But now I actually have the items that is represented by this SketchUp drawing. And you can possibly guess if you've watched any of the other videos, but perhaps wondering what the heck it is. Well, long story short, it is the bars that I want to use in the workshop to make the 3, 4, 5 triangulation method for locating points to generate bench dog holes. This one, however, is a little bit different from most in that it has the spacings of 100 millimeters instead of the 96. As I'm not worried about having some industry standard cabinetry made, joinery but cabinets, that match the 96 millimeter spacing or 32 millimeter spacings, there is no need to have my spacings at 96 millimeters, and for the most part would be a pain in the butt for me in the way I want to make use of my workshop to produce items. So 100 millimeters was chosen. I had a trial run marking and drilling and tapping the holes myself by buying some steel, and it was going swimmingly until I started measuring them up, and they were out, the holes were out by 1/10 of a mil or 3/10 of a mil, depending on which ones I measured and combinations thereof. Well, that absolutely, it kind of annoyed me because it was never ever going to produce accurate 3, 4, 5 triangulation method for making my bench dog holes. Not even close in some cases. I had a version of this probably 6 years or more ago, and it utilized 50 mil wide, same as this, and 1200 long, about the same as this, long 3 millimeter strips of steel, 3 or 4 millimeter thick, and that it had the 100 millimeter holes drilled in it, and they were 4 millimeters to allow me to drill my, was it 3 millimeters, either or, and it enabled me to accurately do the 3, 4, 5 method. I had 3 strips, so I could do that method, and it allowed me to drill my holes very accurately in my worktops. And it worked. Pretty much. For a while. You're kind of getting these pauses indicating something. Well, of course, in my naivete, I was actually using the steel as a sacrificial item, and that ain't no way of keeping accuracy. The drill itself was rubbing against the steel or the hole edges, and eventually, of course, they slogged out and became less and less accurate. Then I fell across, a few years after that, when I had them and I was using them, I fell across the path system. And I'd never seen that before, and like Peter Parfitt had created this system that is like, it was really nice, it's very sophisticated. And then he made the Mark II version, which was even better. And that's when I saw them, and I thought, oh, he's actually explaining why, even with his very, very accurately machined items, there is the possibility of user-induced accumulative errors. And this is the way, and he explained it, this is the way you should use them to reduce that chance of the errors being created in the first place. And I thought to myself, wow, I should get that. And I looked at the price, and it was almost $700 New Zealand dollars by the time I got it here. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to spend that sort of money. I'm never going to do that. So I proceeded to do my own method, which turned out to be kind of disastrous. So then I've paid the money to get the laser cut strips, 5 bars in fact. One's represented here in grey, and this plate. And I spent about $500 getting that done. I was going, hang on. Would I have been better off spending the money for that beautiful path system? And the answer is probably. But no. This is at 100 millimeters. Peter's system is 96. So that was a tick against the path system for me. Plus, I think there is some inherent betterment in using this approach than the path system. I'm not saying I'm competing against it, I'm just making the observation, because I've had a CNC accurate laser cutter make a bar that in this case is 1.6 long, so it's got 15 spaces, 16 holes, that is as accurate as I can possibly get it. I place that on my workbench, on the panel that I want to drill the holes into, and without moving it, I can drill all 16 holes. There is no leapfrogging of the drill system to create those holes. I have them already in one line. And then with the 3-4-5ing or versions of it, I can create as accurate as is humanly possible in a workshop the positions for those other holes to be drilled. In fact, I've got 3 bars. You've got the 3 bars here because one is utilised elsewhere, but I've got the 3-4-5, I've got the 6-8-10, and I've got the 9-12-15. I think I got that right. Bars, the combination, so I can make a small 3-4-5 triangle, the one that's double that size, and then one that's triple that size. And this is the one we're showing here, or this bar here. Then I can cut one of the bars, or a couple of the bars down to create the bars for those other and smaller versions. That seems to me to make a lot more sense. It may not be as refined, but not by much less. Now, where it all started out was I'd purchased a set of, or some items to drill dowels, something that requires a modicum of accuracy to make things align, and they happen to be spaced at, or the holes in the guide, 32 millimeters. And therefore 96 millimeters for the, when you jump across 3 holes, or another 2 holes. And I thought, oh, that's actually the MFT type spacings. Oh, what if I bought another bar and used those 2 bars, the drill guides, to make the holes at 96 millimeters? After all, I can kind of live with the 96 mil. For my work surface and my projects. Prefer 100, can live with 96. And then I came up with doing it myself, which failed. Then I've come up with another way of doing it, which is going to be even more interesting than this. But I thought, to heck with it, I'll spend the money and get these cut. So at this stage, I've spent more money than the path system. That would have been probably better for me to have purchased. But as I'm saying, and my claim here is that this in some way might be a better way of going for the money spent. I could have done this in wood and it marked it pretty damn accurately. I might have had a bit of success there, but I know that I'm going to join a couple of stories together in a minute. You don't know that, but I do. But I think this will have some benefit over the path system for my situation. Now, why that can be is the bar that I purchased from Banggood. It was an Enjoy Wood product. I saw it from Dennis on from his channel, from Hooked on Wood, and I looked at it and I'm going, oh, I'll get one of those. So I got them, and I hadn't realised then, but there's the wee bushings that screw into the bar has got a 14 by 1 millimeter pitched thread on it. If I get these bars, remembering, oh, by the way, they are 10 millimeters thick, so fairly darn chunky. If I get them, I can drill and tap a 14 by 1 millimeter hole, which is actually not all that difficult, believe it or not. So I purchased the tap, more money of course, and I've done that. And those bushings fit perfectly. The thread on the bushing is 10 millimeters, hence the 10 millimeter thick steel. Additionally, the same manufacturer of the dowel guide makes available the bushings in different sizes. So you can go from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I think 10. So that range of bushings, all with the same thread, can go in here, and you can use whatever size drill that suits to mark them. The approach that I'm using here is to use the 4 millimeter bushing, to use a center bit or centering bit that is generally used or often used in lathes. Not always, but generally. The main body of that drill bit is 4 millimeters, which fits in silky smooth into that bushing. That centering bit then has a 1 millimeter pilot drill bit end, allowing me to spot drill all the positions with a very fine point of that 1 millimeter drill. Because if I try to use 1 millimeter drill, it is going to bust on me. But being a centre bit, like you get the idea that that's much more robust, etc., and easily replaced. So now I can spot drill my work surface to then allow me to come back with a guided 20 millimeter drill bit to locate on that very fine locating point and drill my 20 millimeter holes. Or that same guide that has the 20 millimeter holes just happens to have a 14 by 1 millimeter thread on it, meaning my guide bushes that I've got from my doweling jig that I'm using in this jig here, these strips here and this plate here, I can put into that drill guide to allow me to do other sized dead plumb drill. Like I can drill into my surfaces, meaning I can make registration points, I can make locating points for plates and jigs, all with that one set. So I'm going to say judicious, or lucky, accumulation of items has permitted me to make a very comprehensive and I think very accurate MFT style of top and hole for the bench dogs. One of the other issues is if I were to make if I wanted to make a full sheet like this, well, it's not actually an 8x4 sheet, but it's well, what is it? Let's let you know. It is a 1800 by 800. This happens to be roughly the size of my workbench. I was contemplating getting a sheet and drilling all of these holes using these bars, and I'm going to suggest very accurately. However, again, kudos to Peter Parfitt. He made the comment about this is the process that allows you to use his system to achieve the most accurate outcome, acknowledging that if you don't use it properly, you've got this chance of introducing errors. And he said, do not start with your line of holes here and here. because once you start doing that, you start to, depending on how you do it, you start to fill out the holes, and there's a general movement where by the time you get to these holes, they can be inaccurate by ever so small amount. Strange enough, that's exactly what I found when I used my very first ones about 6 or 7 years ago. I could get it accurate, and sometimes you might not. There's the problem. And he said, start in the middle, put your first bar in here and here, make your 3, 4, 5 method, and then you can generate out both ways. You've effectively halved the potential for those accumulating errors. And I thought, very wise man is Peter. The claim here is, I've got even a better way of doing it. And that is, I'm not going to start with a full sheet. I could, and I might. But I'm not starting with a full sheet. I'm going to start with panels. That means that my workbench, this is the area of my workbench, not the workbench itself. The workbench itself is not going to have all the holes drilled into it. It'll have registration holes, but not a whole gazillion holes drilled into it. Not a good idea. And still, I have the bench dog surfaces in panels, maybe 250, 300, 350 wide, and they can be doweled together, because guess what? I've got the tools to do that. I've already hinted at that, haven't I? But I can dowel the panels together, and they can be pulled apart and stored, so I don't have a big top like this hanging around getting in the way. I can break it down, pop it up on a shelf. It can be there until I want to use it. Also, it can be drilled out at 100mm centers and or 96 in different panels, all stored away, waiting to be used when they're needed, rather than being on the workbench in the workshop, getting in the way when they're not needed. So there was that. Plus, the approach is the middle panel along the length is your backbone or your spine of the very first set of holes. So not only have I followed Peter's idea of placing and starting my line in the middle, but I'm lining up in the middle both ways. So I am, you could say, quartering, not simply halving, but quartering the potential. Well, actually, I'm doubling. I'm twice as accurate one way. I'm 4 times it. You work it out. But that's a much better way of fine-tuning your bench hole positions. That is the start of it, and makes for a lot more sense. Plus, here's the other aspect of it. Why am I doing this to begin with? And I came up with, well, it'd be nice to have this as, because it replaces what I had before. And track saw. Where do you cut mostly with your track saw? And it's generally going, not always, sometimes it's along the long length, I'll acknowledge that, but a lot of the time, most of the time, it'll be across this way. And you will want a certain amount of off-cut holding, or the item needs to be supported out here. So there's a really good chance that you will want your work surface to have a 4 or 5 or 600mm outfeed side. So your track saw would more than likely run through not the center of the panel, the workbench, but biased one side. So wouldn't it be better to have your 3-5 triangulation method start at that point where your bench dogs are going to be located for your track saw? And the answer is probably would be a better idea. So that's what I'm contemplating, having a central spine down the middle, and then locating the starting point at this point where the bench dogs would be for the track saw. You're not going to get anything more accurate than the very first triangulation of your bars. So better placed here and here. So that's why I'm saying it's a little bit better way of approaching it, I think. And how we then make use of the panels, that's another video because this one's already gone 20 minutes. But that is a way more logical way of approaching making accurate multi-function top for track saw, jigs, setting out using bars like this. So you could say all of these holes, almost, are drilled with one position of your guide. And what can be more accurate than that? Instead of maybe 5, 6, 7 movements of a tool, no matter how accurate it is, there is just that little bit of tolerance that can creep in errors. So you can see the benefit. And I'm going to make a video again. You don't get away lightly with me, do you? But I'll show the process in SketchUp and in the workshop, so you can see what the hell, like I tend to be a bit of a chatty lad, rather than my drolling tone voice to, you're going, well, what the hell are you talking about, Dave? Well, you'll be able to see it, and you're going, now I get it. That's why I say the benefits. So there's all that. Long-winded? Yeah, I'll accept, but beneficial? Definitely. So there we go. That is a fairly comprehensive remake of a video I've probably made earlier, but now that I've actually got the items in my hands in the workshop and starting to make them, there's some benefit of remaking the video. One of the things I actually got, the holes have to be drilled out to 13 millimeters to allow for the thread. It's a 14 by 1. The comment was, and I got them laser cut at 10 millimeters, because the comment was that in the process of laser cutting, it can case harden the steel, or just around the surfaces, which is probably not ideal for nice, accurate tapping process. So I said, right, let's leave it at 10 millimeters. I'll sneak up on the hole. I went to use my 12mm bit. No. It was blunt as, so I used a 12.5 and then a 13mm to drill out the holes. Went very smoothly, and now I've done 3 of the holes, the tapping holes, and I'm using the drill press as the tap guide to make sure it's as accurate as I can get. So that's where we're at there. Yeah, interesting though about the smoothness of the holes. Plus, and he made the comment that even with their accuracy of their laser, it's not always perfectly plumb. It's got a small taper. And I thought, well, that's odd. And I wondered whether the taper is even all the way around. So that's interesting. So to achieve as accurate as I could, the hole, I chamfered the steel before I drilled, and then I chamfered it again before I tapped. Hopefully any small manufacturing errors will be reduced. So there's that. Well, that went 24 minutes. Okay, that's enough. I think it's I'm due for my 4th cup of tea for the morning. And more videos to come for certain. You can't shut me up, even if you wanted. Okay, that's it. I'm off. I'll see you in the next one now. Bye.